Topic today was deliberately selected to get some interest. It's called Sharia Compliant National Security. And it's not a very complicated topic or subject. It's very simply, and this is a point that I will reiterate throughout my talk, that when you deviate from the Quran and the Sunnah, you will run into problems. You will run into problems. And when we say Sharia, we talk about the values and the laws and the systems that Allah has put in the Quran and the Sunnah to guide us in our life. It's useful for setting up an entire government. It's useful for running a masjid. It's relevant for you in your home. And especially, I mean, we had this, the khutbah was planned 2.5 months ago, and on the topic of terrorism. And, you know, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, that, you know, recent events occurred. And actually last week I was in Washington, D.C. I'm from Canada, of course you know this. I went to D.C., I met with the FBI Counterterrorism Center, some other government agencies in Quantico, Virginia. It's a whole alphabet soup of the government agencies. And I go to them with this message of Sharia Compliant National Security. And I say to them that you cannot have any impact with Muslims if you do not speak from the Islamic sources. If you start coming up with this book and this guy and that guy, it will have no impact on Muslims, very little impact. Because us as Muslims, we love Islam. We love Islam. We love the Prophet ﷺ. When Islam is insulted, when the Prophet ﷺ is insulted, it hurts us. And it should hurt you. You cannot be a good Muslim and it does not hurt you and it does not impact your heart. It's not possible. It's not possible. This is why when Umar radiallahu anhu said to the Prophet ﷺ, I love you. And the Prophet ﷺ says, you know, in a joking way, he says, now ya Umar. And other ahadith, when the Sahaba said to Ya Rasulullah, we love you. And the Prophet ﷺ replied to them, said, watch it, be careful. Because the way the water rushes downhill, the trials and tribulations will come upon you in the same way. Now you see, if we first go to the Quran and the things that the Quran talks about. Now, the fact that terrorism is against Islam, there is no ikhtilaf. There's no difference of opinion on this. There's no difference of opinion on this. Clear cut against Islam. You know, we hear about all the punishments that are in the Quran about theft and various offenses. We know the punishments for them. And there's one ayah that talks about those who make war against Allah and against the Prophet ﷺ and who cause fitna and fasad in the land. It's called hiraba. Hiraba, according to modern scholars, Islamic scholars, many of them from Saudi Arabia, terrorism is hiraba. In the olden days, what would happen is when people used to go with their caravans and with their families, maybe traveling, these would be people who would ambush them as they were going and rob them and do bad things to them. So these offenses fell into the category of hiraba. Do you know the punishment for hiraba in the Quran? It's crucifixion and amputation of the limbs. Allah is telling you something, that these offenses are very, very hated in His eyes. These are the offenses in Islam for terrorism. Now, and you know, I was mentioning this in the first talk, and there were actually 2 police officers who had been invited by the organization, and they were sitting in the back. And I bring this up that, you know, brothers, nowadays what is happening is we are all in pain with what is happening everywhere in the world, especially the Muslim world, Syria, Burma, Bangladesh. You name the place, there is some pain in the hearts of the Muslims. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, to the effect that the ummah is like one body. If one part of the body is hurt, the whole body hurts. So what we are seeing in the world today, it should hurt us. We can't avoid it. But what is happening is that people are getting angry, especially young people, old people. They're getting very angry, and the anger is clouding their judgment. Islam is a religion of proof, of truth. We don't just go on what anybody says. Nowadays you have people, listening to YouTube and, just any sheikh, Google is not acceptable. Some people, they are very good. There are some people that I know of, now Dr. Yasir Qadi, other scholars who are from the West, who understand the Western system, who are educated in the Western system. Those people are not the ones to go to, these strange people online, angry, yelling, screaming. The Prophet ﷺ was never described as a gangster. He was not a thug that he stood outside and he yelled at the people and he pointed to the people and he said, you this and you that. This was not his way. The Prophet ﷺ is referred to by Allah in the Quran as Rahmatan lil Alameen. Worlds, not just human world, worlds, mercy to the worlds. We have to ask ourselves, what do I show the people? What is my akhlaq, my character? What is it like? Is it like a gangster or is it like a prophet? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. There is a lot of hate speech against Muslims nowadays. Propaganda against Muslims. Hate speech. But you see, this sort of speech was always there. There's an ayah in the Quran, يُرِيدُونَ يُطْفِئُ نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَاللَّهُ مُتِمَّ نُورِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. So the candle, when it has it lit and the flame is lit, they would extinguish the candle. So the ayah says, they seek to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouth. And then I say with their mouthpieces. People they put forward on TV shows, radio shows, to try to extinguish the light of Allah. But Allah only wills that the light shines, even if the disbelievers, they don't like it. When the Prophet ﷺ would give the Quran, would recite the Quran and teach the people about Islam, the people would gather and he would give them the message. And when they were finished, the pagans at the time there, what they used to do is they used to have another group of people who used to stand down the road. So when those people came from the Prophet ﷺ, they would tell them their stories to mix up the Quran. Mix up what was told by the Prophet ﷺ. This is how they treated the Prophet ﷺ in his time. Torture. 10 years the Prophet ﷺ preached Tawheed in Mecca. The people were tortured. One Sahabi came, he had marks all over his back. They were trying to get some sympathy from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he was trying to make a point here. So he says, there were believers. The people used to take steel combs and tear the flesh away from their bodies. You don't know torture. So when the Prophet ﷺ had power in Medina and returned back into Mecca, did he kill everyone? No. He forgave everyone actually. A few people were killed. They were active, hostile combatants. They had to be killed. Maybe 10 people, I think, the sources, Islamic sources talk about. But the whole cities, and they were spared. There was no killing. When Umar radiallahu anhu went to Jerusalem and laid Jerusalem under siege, remember the Jews had been kicked out by the Romans. When Umar radiallahu anhu took Jerusalem, did he tell the Jews, yeah, stay out? No. He said, we will protect the minorities. This is Sharia, real Sharia, from real Muslims. They would protect the minorities. Did they go and kill everyone? No. Did they break the churches down? No. In fact, we know this very, very well-known example of when he came inside and they were taking him on a tour, basically. They said, come, if you want to pray here in our church, you can pray. He says, no, I'm going to pray over there, because I don't want people who come afterwards to think Umar was laying claim to the masjid, to the church. See how the wisdom that he had. They didn't kill everyone. They didn't destroy the churches. This is not from Islam. I don't know how people have come to this understanding. In some places, they target churches on their religious days. There's even ayat in the Quran, one ayat in particular, that says that those who you come upon, who are in their monasteries and their temples, you leave them. You leave them. You are prohibited from attacking them. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. When the Crusaders, when they were throwing rotting corpses, rotting bodies over the walls, did Salah ad-Din go and throw rotting bodies over their walls? No. He showed a better example. His example was so good that even the ones that he defeated had good to say about him. This is a prophetic example, because the Prophet ﷺ, they never accused him of lying. He was al-Amin, the trustworthy. Aman in Arab countries, and they have this thing called Wizarat al-Aman, which is their security services. Very brutal people, very brutal the way they do business there. But Aman is the word here, Amin. People were secure with the Prophet. This is why the Prophet ﷺ says, the one whose neighbor is not safe from his fitna, he's not from us. He's not from us. In just the neighbor, لا يؤمن أحدكم وجاره جائع. You are not a believer and your neighbor is hungry. Forget terrorism and politics. Your neighbor is hungry. Look at the example. When Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet ﷺ and was telling him about the rights of the neighbor, the Prophet ﷺ remarked, he said, I thought the neighbor would inherit from the person. So this is the example that the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ have shown us. And the Sahaba followed this example. And the great leaders, we can use the example of Salah ad-Din. Because, they don't call him a terrorist. He had very good conduct, very good character. They celebrate him as a good man. His physician was a man, Maimonides. Maimonides is a very big Jewish scholar. Very big Jewish scholar. He was his personal physician. When Richard the Lionheart became sick, it's a very famous story. He offered to send his personal physician to him, to heal him. Look at their example. This is Salah ad-Din during the height of the Crusades. It doesn't get worse than that. And look at how he behaved. I gave you examples of the Prophet ﷺ, how he behaved, how the Sahaba behaved. So inshallah, what I will do is in the next part, I will mention 3 points on how the community can move ahead with what is happening, very difficult times for all of us. So inshallah, I will give you more on this later. فَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. I'm going to give you 3 points. I'm going to talk about the individual that is connected to national security work. Somebody's here, guaranteed. In fact, I'll call them servants of Allah who have followed me here. And they're writing everything down. And they're writing everything that you are saying down. And they are the angels that Allah has created. Kiramun and Katibin. And I joke sometimes with the national security agencies. I say that, you tap phones and you intercept in communications. So these angels, they intercept your brain, even your thoughts that you don't even speak, they know. So fear Allah. Fear the one who can take your iman away. Fear the one that if he decides to catch you on something that you did, you spend time in hellfire. Fear him. We say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Nothing can happen, there is no power except with Allah. The individual who is working with national security, I would encourage this. Say that if a youth or somebody is involved in something, don't push him over the edge. Pull him back from the edge. Prophet ﷺ said, help your brother when he is the oppressed and when he is the oppressor. The Sahaba replied, we understand when he is the oppressed, but when he is the oppressor, says stop him from his oppression. We have a Sharia. If you really think about it, at times you may have to chop the head off of a Muslim because he committed an offense. The Prophet ﷺ said, if my daughter stole, I would cut her hand off. Umar radiallahu anhu lashed one of his sons. He became drunk. Public, they call it disorderly public intoxication. He himself beat him. Sometimes this has to happen. If somebody is committing this kind of offense, murder, theft, this, that, he has to be punished. This is our way. This is the way of all civilizations. Second category, I think is the very important category, is the parents. I just came back from national security agencies talking to them. And when the police were here, I gave the example of them as well. So they feel it. When they have to go to somebody's house and drag their kid out and take them to a prison cell, they feel it too. They understand what's happening here. It creates a lot of trauma in the family. So parents, don't let them do the job that you can be doing. If you do not give love to your children, if you do not pay attention to what they're thinking and what's happening to them in their life, they will move away from you and they will go to someone who will give them what they're looking for. And na'udhu billah, if that is the person that does not have respect for the Quran and Sunnah, sooner or later somebody is going to be breaking your door down to drag him out. Parents, you have a responsibility. Even the kids that are here, young people, I know sometimes you don't relate to your parents and this and that. Now is not the time for this anymore. Now is not the time for this. Don't let the government be doing this work. We want to keep them out of your homes. Third, most important category is the community. The masjid should be like an embassy. It should be like an embassy. And when people come, they're attracted. It smells nice, looks nice, very clean. This is what people should see with their eyes. We know the stories, in those days, the masjid was the prison cell, was the library, was the university, was everything. When the prisoners who would be tied on the pillars, and then when it was time for them to be released, some of them were like, we don't want to go. We like what we see here. We like this. You're helping the poor, you're helping the orphans. These are things that community should be doing. Security. You, the community, take care of your backyard. You have cameras out. I don't know if you have cameras outside. I'm just saying, some places they have cameras outside facing the parking lot to make sure nobody breaks into the car and steals the car or steals belongings from the car. You people who are here in the masjid, is your responsibility to watch the masjid. Who's who? Who is this guy that's coming here, handing out these pamphlets, talking like this, talking like that? Watch him. Keep an eye on him. Kick him out if you have to. It is your responsibility as the people who are keeping the masjid alive. It is your responsibility to protect yourselves from people, you don't know who they are. I'll tell you honestly, could be an agent of the government, you don't know. Maybe he's a radical guy, could be, you don't know. If you see somebody is doing this kind of mischief, fitna, in your area, be aware of it. Because if you don't do it, the government will do it. And the last place that I would want to see, I work with them, I tell them, the last place I want to see you is coming into my masjid. With your boots and your dogs and your guns and this and that. This is not the place for that. This is a holy place. I'm just going to finish by saying that, reiterate, if you deviate from the Quran and the Sunnah, you're going to run into problems. Whether it's in your daily life, whether it's in your business life, whether it's at the government level, you will run into problems. If the help of Allah is not with you, it doesn't matter what agency and what this and what that. It doesn't matter. Allah is everything. You know the hadith of Jibreel, alayhi salam, when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, what is Islam? And Islam is the things that you do, the physical acts, salah, fasting, zakah, going for hajj. And what is Iman? And Iman is those things that you believe. Then he asked him, what is Ihsan? And Ihsan is a state of being, state of mind. And he said, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ إِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. That you worship Allah as though you see Him. But if you don't see Him, you better believe He sees you. So, I know I call this Sharia Compliant national security. It's very simple. It's Islam. The values are completely consistent with Islam. I've been training them, I've been teaching them. This is, what these people do in the name of Islam is no different than a Christian guy who kills a doctor because he thinks, oh, he shouldn't be doing this, such and such. And the brother wrote on the pamphlet, terrorism is an act. It's not a faith. This is completely against Islam. And we should distance ourselves from it and say that, you know what? I have nothing to do with this. This is not from our religion. The Prophet ﷺ never did this. Did he go and kill women and children? A'udhu billah. When one woman was seen dead, the Sahaba were gathered around wondering what happened, who did this, how did this happen. The Prophet ﷺ said, you can't even cut the tree down. If you actually look in the books of Ahadith, there's a whole tafsir given when, I think it was in the time of Abu Bakr, one tree was cut down. And they give a whole explanation why that tree had to be cut down. You can't, taking life easily like this, la, 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 not Islam. Allah says in the Quran, you take one life, innocent life, it's like you killed all of humankind. Why would you say this? How major is this? Finally, I'm just going to say that for the parents, of course, as well, if you're confused of what your children are reading, even some of the youth, you're listening to this guy, you're listening to this guy. What's his sanad to the Prophet ﷺ? This was the test in those days. In those days when confusion started to occur, they would say to us, name to us your men. Who are your rijal? Who are your men that are telling you this? The same rule applies today. We are not cut off from the Prophet ﷺ. Impossible. If you are cut off from the Prophet ﷺ, you're cut off from Islam. It's simple as that. فأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله إن الله هو الغفور الرحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.